Great. Well, I have to say, one of the things as a venture capitalist that I love most about my job is getting to interact with great CEOs. Every time I do, I learn something. They are really the heart of what we do in Silicon Valley. And I know Keith well because we're an investor in Docusign. The opportunity to meet Gina, Sam, and George through this has been a real treat for me. And I have had takeaways in my conversations with each of them that I hope to get a chance to share with you. The first panel was a lot about ideas and trends, and we're not going to be successful. We have a strong point of view at Scale Venture Partners. You have to be backing a trend that has wind behind its back to make the kind of venture returns we need to make our entire industry successful. But I think any of us who've been in the shoes of an operator know that's only half the story. I mean, you can be in the right place at the right time, but if you don't know how to do it as a leader and a founder, that opportunity is going to go unused and untaken advantage of. So this is going to be a bit more the inner life of a founder, inner life of a leader, inner life of a CEO. Rather than looking out, let's look in and try to figure out from these guys who've all been successful, all of them successful in a serial fashion, what is it? And you'll find they have a lot in common, and you'll also find out, which is great news, they have a lot that's very different. Because I also think this is the kind of thing where one size absolutely does not fit all. Each of us needs to find, and I find personally, I sit beside other VCs, like the group that just spoke, and I sit beside CEOs, and I think, ooh, I want to borrow a little of that, and a little of that, and a little of that will fit me. So hopefully we'll get to tease some of this out so you can learn. I'll do a quick intro. You have their bios, so you kind of know their background. The thing that each of them has in common, I'll briefly say, is just incredible passion for each of their segments. In the case of Keith, it's a history starting at GM, ending at Docusign, about eliminating paperwork. That's been a theme of what he's done. Docusign is into digital transaction management. A lot of us have used this to buy a home, electronic signatures, really looking how to take over the world. Before he did Docusign, he was CEO of Ariba. That became a $34 billion company while he was at the helm. We talked about the last bubble on the last panel. Been there, done that, Keith. You know how to manage that. So I think obviously you'll get a whole lot out of Keith. Sam's a lot of fun because his whole passion is travel. And again, there's a theme here. Take what you love and make a business out of it. That's how you can work nights and weekends and be as intense as you have. Having worked at Travel Post, DealBase, and now HotelTonight. And a couple investors here spoke earlier. But a lot of us, I thought of you, being stranded at Denver, a few years ago. I sure wished you'd been, on my mobile phone a few years ago. There is exactly what we would have done, looked up, found a great hotel, probably at a good price to boot, and been able to book it. So I think filling a need very specifically, understanding that market really well. Gina is fun because you've decided, I loved your comment, high fructose syrup, that's what social media can be at its kind of almost too much phase, and you wanting to make it high quality rock candy, but really making social media, more effective for each of us, working with people. She worked at Ing first as a founder, started at Goldman Sachs many years ago, so really got a sense of the landscape. Now founder, of a company really helping the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, right?
Amongst others, yeah.
Amongst others at Mightybell, really helping them then create their own social network. So that idea of sort of a community that has such a common interest. Lean In, I think, is another one. So there are quite a few that I think are hugely interesting. And then George, I love your history. RocketFuel. He started out life being interested in rocket science. I believe you were a Star Trek fan early on, took that on to get a PhD at Stanford in artificial intelligence, made his rocket scientist credentials real by working at NASA, then at Yahoo, and then the founder of RocketFuel. So taking AI, really now the trendy piece, we think of it as machine learning today, to applying that artificial intelligence, applying that machine learning to make advertising more effective. Having recently gone public, congratulations, and congratulations to all of you guys. And I gave them some really broad questions that I thought we would try to tease out sort of what each of them can help us, think about entrepreneurship, team building, culture, and what's it really like to be a CEO? How do you think about developing yourself? And a lot of you in the room are thinking that to yourself. So those are kind of the themes we'll touch on. And I'm going to start with entrepreneurship. And I'm going to start with you, Keith, because I know you have sort of the 7 success factors for entrepreneurs. You've taught at Purdue. You teach inside your company. You speak at a lot of things like this. Tell us a little bit about those.
This was something that we just came up with after it started a couple companies, and as Benchmark was getting started, I was their first entrepreneur in residence. So I said, what would be those key critical success factors of taking something from a concept to escape velocity to a great sustaining company? So I'll whip through them as fast as I can. So the first one is the market. It's just as easy to create a company in a big market as it is a small one. Ideally, if it's undergoing a paradigm shift. At Ariba, we wrote the first enterprise application for the internet. Docusign, we're leveraging mobile and the cloud and all that. And then especially if you can get the network effect. So for example, Ariba now, to this day, $1 trillion of commerce goes through the Ariba network. That's more than Alibaba, Amazon, and eBay combined, built to last.
Wow.
The second key factor, I call it focus, focus, focus. And that is find that initial beachhead and move on. When we started Ariba, it's like, okay, we created this, our objective was to create this category, business-to-business e-commerce. So where are we going to start? Let's start following the golden rule. Go after the buyers. You can go to the buyers, suppliers, let's go after that. At Docusign, it was simple. It was electronic signature, move to DTM, boom, on to the third act. The third one is positioning, and that is you got to be able to just say it in a few words. For Ariba, it was we're the agent for the purchasing agent. For Docusign, my 85-year-old mother back in Rocky River, Ohio, in a bridge club understands the value proposition of Docusign. Very, very simple. The fourth is a business model. You know, back in 1995, it's like we looked at about 100, you know, we call them mediocre internet deals. It's about having that simple business model in terms of how are you gonna monetize. At Ariba, it was selling big enterprise deals and spreading it out. At Docusign, it's a lot more sophisticated because it goes all the way from consumer up to enterprise. So the whole freemium model, all that. And then
all the way across the stage, I understand.
All the way across the stage.
Docusign's partners with every one of you guys, I think.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And then that fifth one is execution. You can have the greatest strategy in the world, but if you can't execute, you're going to lose every time. And if you have a pretty good strategy and you got to execute everybody else, you're going to win every time. The sixth one, which is the most important people, the company with the best people wins, period, end of story. And then how do you get them working together as a team? And I know you're going to come back to that. And the seventh one is you got to be good at raising money, because if you have this A-plus team, you got to give them time. And in business, time equals money. And it's not just money for money's sake, it's who you raise the money from. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, that actually leads me to George, because I know you've had experience about raising money that had some challenges. In your Series B, you did exactly, dialing into that number 7 about raising money, taking it from the right people, you made a pretty daring decision. Oh.
Or maybe I can just look down. That works. Yeah, well, we raised Series A. I'll say, you know, the anecdote for Series A is I had a friend who'd been an entrepreneur a few times, and I went to him saying, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be my own boss, and it'll be awesome. And he said, you don't understand. You're going to have a board of directors with Heidrick and Struggles on speed dial for the first time you screw up. Yeah. So think about that. And so yeah, we were very circumspect around Series A. I brought Bill Erickson on board from More Davidoff, fantastic guy, very nerdy and aligned with our culture. He loves to just talk about lasers and things. So that was cool, and he had a thesis around investing in companies that leverage what we would now call big data for advantage in a market. And when Series B rolled around, we had a preemptive offer for runway extension, and the time frame here is sort of late 2009, so you know, horrible economy. Sequoia, thank you very much for rest in peace, good times. That was a lovely deck to circulate around the valley. So those are bad times, and so preemptive runway extension was interesting, but in the end, as we got to know the team more and more, we just thought, I don't really want these folks on the board, and we simply said no. We didn't actually have a backup. I think the firm thought we were toying with them, and we actually had some other offer. We didn't. We would rather take our chances than bring on money that came with the wrong strings attached. In the end, I put a little money into the company. Our Series A investors gave us a little extra capital and runway extension, and then Series B, then we could raise it more at our leisure the next year. And since then, I guess we've raised a lot from both kind of private and public markets, so it's been good since then.
Yeah, you need the money, you need it from the right people, and you were willing to take. That's a big risk. That's a big risk. So Gina, you've talked a lot in various audiences as well about entrepreneurship, and I think at one point you'd been quoted for 5 steps, things like diversity, choosing the right partner, all those good things. As an entrepreneur, the lessons that you think about, and in particular, most recent lessons.
So thank you for having me. We at Mightybell have a platform for building smart professional social networks that we're really focused today on the self-employed, teachers, and small business owners to be able to learn from each other respectively. And I just want to build on actually the point around fundraising. I think fundraising and the ability to raise money is very important. I think it is over-indexed and overvalued in Silicon Valley, and revenue is so much more fun. And I think that not only are you focused on building the strongest business when you're going after revenue, but you're able to then figure out, to your point, Keith, what the right model is to just get more of it. And I think that it's been interesting, as I have really liked revenue and seen how it's enabled us to build a much stronger product, company, and platform with Mightybell. I have found all sorts of fascinating things said to me, such as, "You're naive." I was actually told by an investor last week that I was naive by focusing on revenue as opposed to telling a really powerful story for fundraising. And so I do think there's just this really interesting cultural dynamic where sometimes I think Silicon Valley culture is set up so that the strongest entrepreneurs need to look at all the things that you're told and figure out for yourself and figure out for your opportunity and the value that you're bringing to your customers and to your, in our case, our end users as well. And look in the face of what conventional thinking and wisdom is and say, there are a set of beliefs that I have or we have that are different and therefore potentially more valuable if we are right than everybody else. And certainly, even Silicon Valley that loves to talk about innovation and disruption and paradigm shifting and all this stuff. I think, really getting clear on what is the value you're bringing to the world, what is the mission behind it, and how you navigate conventional thinking that seeps in to even a very dynamic culture is what makes this thing so much fun.
Actually, Sam, that's very much similar to what you've been thinking as an entrepreneur. You should add on to that one. I agree. Out-of-the-box thinking.
Yeah, we operate in a very competitive market, and so one of the things that we did early on was think about how do we do everything different? How do we do everything better? So that could be the content that we have, the photos that we have on our app, the app itself, but then also the culture and the company and the people we hire. So we go through a really rigorous process to make sure that we're hiring the right people and then make sure that they have really interesting and compelling challenges to retain them and that they're focused on the right things.
Well, it's interesting because again, back to the are you naive? I would have turned that, by the way, if they didn't believe in revenue, you should have turned that around and say, are you naive? Maybe they weren't there in the bubble. We care about revenue. And it puts, and frankly, as an entrepreneur, it puts you in charge of your fate more. I mean, the fact that you took that risk, you then can build a board, build a team. I always say to entrepreneurs, you should be interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing you. We're going to be really key partners with Rolodexes and all that. You know, and I think revenue is such a powerful thing. We backed a CEO who had a great line, just make revenue happen. That was his simple mantra for the company. And, you know, all good things come from that.
I reported to Fernando, who is the CEO of NextTag, and during the dot-com bubble, he's notorious for being a very intense leader. I learned a lot from him, reporting to him for 13 months. But we were chasing a lot of different metrics early on, and we were chasing, you know, is it users, is it pages, is it, you know, what is it? During the bubble period, we were doing a lot of insane advertising, and then we all withdrew, and he said, you know what, the one metric that nobody's going to ever F around with and give you a hard time on is revenue. So that's all we're going to focus on.
Don't believe me?
And
look
then
at my
he was
P&L.
once he figured out his North Star, the company was on, you know, at least for a good 5 or 6 years on a really good tear. So.
I love it.
Do you mind if I pile on?
Please do. That's the point.
It's just funny. Once I was turned down for a job, and they said I was too revenue focused. Now
Great.
it's kind of fun. So we were, you know, per Deloitte, the #1 fastest growing company in revenues in North American technology last year. Did about $250 million in RocketFuel revenue last year. And it's funny, even so, we're in the advertising business. We use AI, essentially robots, to place you know, ads online, buying just ad space one at a time to try to capture the best human attention for a product. And we were talking to a toothpaste company. You can even track stuff to offline sales, so you can know, you know, you serve the ad to this population, and they bought this much more of your toothpaste. And so we were pitching to the toothpaste media team at an agency about, wouldn't this be awesome? Like, you could actually just know you're selling toothpaste. And the head of media buying for this one toothpaste brand, he sits back in his chair and says, you know, how excited can I get about selling one more tube of toothpaste? And we thought, a lot, right?
There's probably a lot of margin in that last.
You may not realize it, but that's your job here. But people get so caught up sometimes on these surrogate metrics, like users, or like, you know, this notion of brand value, but without actually measuring sales. It's kind of weird. So it's been part of it. What we've been trying to do is just kind of increase the rationality in this world of marketing and advertising to talk about, you know, what the real results are that people are after.
That is great. That is great. Well, you know, all of you have kind of bucked the trend in building each of your companies, or going against the grain early on. And Sam, you were interesting because, you know, first everyone thought travel was done, and secondly, building your team, you didn't hire people out of travel to build a travel company. Can you talk about how you built your team a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Unorthodox.
So this is my third online travel company, and the first two were sort of training grounds for HotelTonight. But my co-founder, which is another story, just having the joys and the correlation with success of having a really strong co-founder. He had worked at Orbitz for 4 years and been on the initial team that launched Orbitz Hotels. So one of his goals is to build a company that is never going to be Orbitz. Something that was a lot more innovative, a lot more forward-thinking, and was sustainable in those metrics, in those qualities. And so one of the things that we did, it would have been very easy for us to hire people that had been at Expedia, that had been at Orbitz, and had been at Travelocity in particular, because they were shedding lots of people. And we looked around, and we said that we didn't want those type of people. We didn't want the thinking that had been done for the past 15 years in online travel. So what we did is we hired people that were interested in changing the world and starting something new and building something great. And we're looking for a startup role in particular. So it was people that were burnt out on banking and consulting 2 or 3 years out of school to build that team that worked with hotels. And what's happened is that we've been able to solve problems that in ways that with a lot of creative thinking, out of the box thinking that we wouldn't have had before. And our hotels are also so happy to get a call from someone that's not the same person that's been calling for the past 15 years. That's going to come with like a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, a lot of how can we help you, not hey, I'm over here again, like I'm at the new thing, like, you know, how do we how do we work together again?
Been there,
let's,
done that.
you know, been there, done that. So it's been a very successful thing for us to get a completely new gene pool for our industry.
What I love about that too is one of the models that I've found really effective is making sure you're surrounded as a CEO with subject matter experts in the particular things that you have to build out, especially if it's an area that you haven't had a lot of experience with before. But then in terms of bringing people onto our team, we have a lot of confidence in our ability to train people and to be able to bring people that are out of the box candidates or without specific domain expertise to be able to get fresh thinking and new people that bring a certain energy to solving the particular issues and challenges that we're bringing forth. And so I do think there's this important role of subject matter experts, but in terms of the people that are in the building every day, not having that kind of classic, well, at Google we did this, or at Microsoft we did this, I think is really valuable and important.
Well, and in terms of team building, I mean, Keith, having watched you build your team, and you've now done this a few times, and you've built a team that managed a $34 billion, company. Tell us about how you look at team building, and you use the word a lot when I listen to you speak about empowerment. Talk a little bit about that. How you hire, how you manage.
Sure, and I look at that as the most important job of the CEO is to build a high-performance team. 3 big things go into that, right? Hire the best people.
Yeah.
And especially if they're better than us. And that's one of our team rules at Docusign. And it's magical if you can make that happen. Actually, if you can ingrain it in the culture so it's actually noble to do that.
Yeah.
And the way to make that happen is you have to have great examples. So that is, that's key.
Now, why do you hire? I really want to stop on that. It's such a really important point. As a venture investor, to me, that's one of the ways I kind of look. And you guys all do this, actually, from the conversations I've had with you. So why do you hire, almost overhire, is kind of what you're talking about.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that, why. There's a risk to that.
Well, the risk of not doing that is not being able to scale.
Yep.
So our philosophy at Docusign is people we hire are people who are overqualified for their role.
Yep.
So, we're not hiring for a company of 1,000, we're hiring for a company of 10,000. And our philosophy is find the most impossible person to hire and go after them with everything that you got. I probably spend 30 to 40% of my time recruiting, interviewing, all that. Over the last year, I brought on board a new COO, Chief Legal Officer, Chief HR Officer, probably 30 face-to-face interviews for each one of those roles.
Wow.
And then, 16 reference checks, and then you got to be good at integrating those into the existing team. And I still have the original set of VPs when I joined Docusign 5 years ago, which was an interesting experience, compared to founding it. So that's key. The other key thing is, how do you scale? If you have all these great people, and the key is empowerment. So the way we probably for a 1,000-person company have the most sophisticated go-to-market strategy of companies our size. So we divvy it up by verticals, we divvy it up by horizontals, we divvy it up from consumer all the way to enterprise, different levels of companies. And with each one of those is an opportunity for a business owner. We call them mini CEOs, and we measure them by contribution margin. So, well, should we hire here? Should we invest there? What do we do? It's to be able to set that up so that these folks are not only accountable, but they're empowered to make those day-to-day optimization decisions. And I think that's the key to growing a company, because it kind of comes in step functions. So.
Well, George, you kind of, I think you said you spend about 50% of your time recruiting, if that's right. And you have an experience of having not hired someone you knew really well, a friend of yours. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what you've learned in terms of hiring and building teams.
Yeah, it's funny. We do, like you were saying, in terms of there's a number of interviews and a number of reference checks. I guess we found early on we kind of fell in love with candidates because you're so desperate that if you're growing fast. That you need people because your existing team is being crushed, by the level of work on them, and so you want to hire. But we found we would fall in love too soon, and then sometimes a manager would do reference checks, but they would almost not be paying attention to some of the warning signals. So we ended up focusing a lot more on the reference checking part of it because a lot of people can pull off looking sane, for a few hours of interview. But I didn't always do it well. In fact, I once hired someone who had worked for Gina and didn't actually ask Gina about him. And we both have probably similar stories about why he doesn't work for us, either of us anymore. See, I think it was funny that we were interviewing our last board member who joined had been previously CMO at Cisco, Sue Bostrom. She's on a number of public company boards and really is kind of overqualified for the little private company whose boards she joined. And we had done so many reference checks and interviews. At some point, I remember in our last conversation, she said, George, you're married, right? How long did you and your wife date before? But it's important for many of these things to get them right. And I think I don't think we've ever lost a candidate who became put out that we were applying too much energy to making sure it was the right fit.
Yeah.
So really, I've never regretted that part of the process.
One of the other things that was a big learning for me was moving from a world-class candidate or a world-class executive to the right executive for our company with our particular values, with our particular dynamics at that time. And I think that one of the things that certainly when I was a first-time CEO, that I was easily influenced by other people's perception of a candidate, and not necessarily trusting my own instincts and my own gut for the kind of company we wanted to build and the kind of people that are that were working the best in that company. And one of the things that we've really done with Mightybell is been very clear about the culture we're building and the kind of people that we want on the team.
Yeah.
So we think about it as, are they world class and are the dynamics going to be world class in our building, as opposed to somebody being able to check off 18 things on their resume or present very well. And that's made a really big difference for us in terms of the results that we've been able to achieve.
You're not buying brand, you're buying content. That's great. Well, you touched on a word that I want every one of these guys to talk about, which is the concept of culture, because every one of you has a very unique culture and a unique approach to it. I'd like to start with Gina. We'll work down, because it's great and I think very instructive. And in particular, what was really instructive for me is you each are so thoughtful about culture, meaning it's not something that just happened to you. You guys were very purposeful in it. So Gina, why don't you start and then we'll work down this way.
Yeah, so we looked at it, first and foremost by, we want to hire and bring on board high integrity, high output, and mission-driven people who believe in the mission that we have. We're not interested in people who don't find the same passion around how do we connect people who should know each other so that they can learn faster and achieve better results, as opposed to just your existing network and new ways of interacting with your existing network. And so when we find somebody, we're really clear up front with what we're looking for and how we operate. And so that's been really important. The other thing that's been awesome is, we are a small early stage startup, and we've done, on purpose, hire a few pretty senior people, myself included, and then relatively junior people. And we think about it as the startup equivalent of a teaching hospital. And it allows us to recruit very effectively against other startups because, we're first and foremost looking for people who believe in our unique mission, which if we get somebody who does, the decision becomes a lot easier. And then the fact that we can really bring to those people, a learning environment where they're going to grow and scale and learn from people who have done it before really gives us a competitive edge in terms of who we're hiring. So we're able, just recently we doubled the size of the team in 2 months with very high quality people. And we know they're high quality because of just how we recruit and the fact that my co-founder and I have both scaled companies before. So it really is fun, and it's, I would never say hiring is easy, but it's easier if you know what you can bring to people who join your team, and you're very clear on what you're looking for. And that, one of the things I've seen not really effective, it doesn't work effectively, is trying to sell people on something that's not the right fit for them. And so we really look at recruiting, and we look at the team that we're building as a learning environment where the right people are it's going to be a very easy decision for the right people, and it's our job to get at that fit as quickly and as effectively as possible.
So kind of picking up on what Gina said, the first thing that we look for, and maybe this sounds corny because I'm an Ohio farm boy, but somebody who wants to change the world. Yeah. I mean, we have a chance maybe that comes around once in a lifetime, twice if you're lucky. to change the way business is done. It's like, well, Docusign is a disruptor. What do you disrupt? Paper. How long has it been done that way? 3,000 years. Yeah. Somebody who gets that is a noble cause. I think the second thing, and this comes along the lines of drive, we look for people who love to compete, who love to win. Maybe the only thing they like better than winning is beating the competition. We look for that.
They don't want to win alone. They want someone right behind their shoulder.
We love that. The other thing is that, in our playbook, we talk about our culture as TVF, teamwork. I mean, we're all a team. We're a team first, functional specialist second. That's really important. And then our values, and our values are, the classic integrity, customer focus, innovation, respect, all that. And people who, our drive is we measure our success by our customer success. And then the F part, it stands for fun. Although we've kind of changed that. We've added the NY to it because everybody's just so damn funny.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a sense of humor.
Makes it easier.
It sure does.
And if my partner was there, there'd be another F, but we won't talk about that.
That's for Fernando. So we set out very early on and deliberately to create a culture. Jared and I both had done a number of startups before, my co-founder, and there's no question that HotelTonight is going to build the dominant hotel booking platform for the mobile era. I'm saying that for the benefit of my investor in the front row here, Jeff. But along the way, we really wanted to make sure that we all enjoyed the journey. Not only Jared and myself, but also all the employees. So it was about, we sat down and we started thinking about what type of environment did we want to create, both for that journey as well as to increase the odds of an incredible endpoint for the business. And that was a place where people could do their absolute best work, and a place where people wanted to work, and a place that was going to attract people that valued excellence and that then cleared the way for them to be able to be excellent. And we set high goals for ourselves that we wanted people to look back on HotelTonight 10, 20 years from when they left the business and say that, wow, that was the best professional experience I had in my life, maybe until I started my own company. And so we set the bar incredibly high for ourselves, and then worked backwards from there. It manifests in a number of different ways, but one of the ways that we talked about early on was, or on our call, was that early on, I think 6 months in, we sat down and defined what the culture was in 3 words. HotelTonight's big on the power of 3. It's a simple way to describe things. We launched in 3 cities. We launched with 3 hotels in each of those cities. And so we described it in 3 words, which is build, question, and respect. So we describe those as build, meaning we're looking for people that want to build something great, lasting, meaningful, permanent, with a solid foundation, not just ship product, not just release, but build, change the world. Question is that we wanted people that didn't just take what had been done before. A lot of the reason why we didn't hire people from Expedia is that they had lost that ability to question the way that the world worked and how things could be done better. And the last is on the respect, which is effectively treating others the way that we wanted to be treated. And that's ourselves, our customers, and our hotel partners, which is also very different in this industry where there's usually an antagonistic and contentious relationship between the hotel and the distribution source and online travel agency. So we set those up. They're in the office when you walk in. We've modified the definitions. We slightly, as the company's evolved, we've squeezed out this concept of excellence from those. Part of respect is being excellent. It's not just being nice. If you just look at respect literally, you wouldn't deal with people that weren't excellent within the organization. And we work very hard to make sure that when people aren't excellent, that they turn it around or they're asked to leave. And that's about respecting the others. That's about respecting our investors, our family members, our other team members. So we spend a lot of time, but with those 3 core principles. And doing it early on is something that anyone here starting a company, I would really recommend doing. It's been really helpful for us as a founding team to be able to look back on those conversations and those early decisions as a foundation for everything else that we've done.
Let's see. So at RocketFuel, instead of 3, we have 2. We call it nerdy but lovable.
I just love that.
Nerdy is supposed to encompass intellectual curiosity, hypercompetence, kind of a faith in science and math. And then the lovable part is more like Tina Fey nerdy, not Revenge of the Nerds nerdy. So welcoming, friendly, helpful. Inside the company, I guess the effects that we see from these are on the lovable side. Every now and then you'll see, like, if somebody's a little grouchy and bringing people down, you'll see people saying, "Well, is that really lovable?" It can get questioned. And on the nerdy side, I guess just as we've scaled the company, I mean, if the model says you should hire more salespeople in the East, or the model says we should advertise more because using our own platform to run ads drives business, we kind of just trust it. That's been one of the reasons I think we've been successful, is just actually having the faith to scale the business fast and kind of. It's funny, the board was worried at various times, are we getting out over our own skis? And the answer turned out to be no. Trusting the model was the right thing to do. So that's guided selection of employees as well as board members for the company.
By the way, one of the things that was interesting is you guys have all talked about the value of revenue. I love that you also got pinged because you were so darn efficient, because you used technology so much when he went public, that his expenses in R&D were too low. Golly, isn't that what more revenue, less expense, and meeting the goals? Well, I'll take it in reverse, because the thing that I've learned over time to ask this of the CEOs that I really respect is how you manage you and your career and kind of a day in the life of the CEO. I mean, what is your value? Because, when you get hired now by one of the people, I may be VP sales, I may be biz dev, I may be HR, your job is sort of everything and nothing, and is your job more the face of the firm? Is it coach? Is it tone at the top? Is it the chief sales officer? How you think about the role of a CEO. And I think it's valuable for all of us in the room to think about, if we aspire to have companies, like these guys have, what skills should each of us be thinking about developing so that we can be as successful? So I'll do the reverse and start at this end, George, with you. And I loved your comment of your role as CEO. Was it helpful that I was there? I loved that sort of thought. And you communicate, I think, regularly with your team. And, just you as CEO.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess we were talking, and I was just coming out of a meeting, and whenever I've just kind of spent time somewhere, I do tend to think, did that help, that I was there? I find, so we're about 1,000 people now spread across the US, Europe, and Australia with a partner in Japan. And so there's kind of a lot of places you could put attention geographically in terms of the department, customers, investors, employees. So I think there's sort of evergreen parts of the pie chart of where time is spent that kind of blur across all those. It's funny, I spend a lot of my time in advice-seeking mode because we're all sort of scaling it to some degree. And I find it's actually there's so much free advice you can get in terms of kind of developing your own career as CEO. I've had some certain overtures that, you got to join this young president's club or this thing or that thing. And I remember asking one of them, what do you guys do? And they say, it's cool, we go out with the Navy SEALs and we shoot things. And I'm like, well, all right. I don't know if I need that exactly. So I find just by talking to CEOs in the Valley, I just had lunch yesterday with someone who's 20 years CEO of a company that scaled magnificently over that period. They're happy to talk and talk about what they did. And I remember one public CEO actually said he actually MBO'd his admin on. He would draw a pie chart of where he wanted to spend his time. And her MBO was trying to hold him to that time allocation.
That's great.
So
remember that.
there's a lot of different little tools that I've been.
The problem is when the pie chart expands to meet that goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
So I think right now we're probably back in a mode of trying to understand, based on this new scale, new acquisition, more focus kind of on the near and midterm on just the employees, how to make sure everybody's happy, and kind of settling into the appropriate new roles and as we integrate.
Well, advice as CEO is something we talked about, and I loved what you had to say, Sam.
So I think that what we talked about on this was the need for CEOs to surround themselves with advisors and trusted advisors. That could be mentors, that could be board members that have done it before, that could be friends, that could be a club, or it could be a CEO coach, or in my case, all of the above. But I think that the way I think about it is that it's sort of like a tax advisor or a financial advisor, which is that you really don't know you need them until you need them. And so setting them up ahead of time and getting them in place so that you can call on them when you have an issue, when you have a disagreement with somebody that you work with, or you have to have a difficult discussion with someone, or you're getting heat from someone else, is important. And I characterized it to you that I think it's irresponsible for a CEO not to have those types of systems in place and those types of advisors in place, especially someone that's in a new phase of being a CEO. I know that it's been vital for me, and it's a very difficult job. It's a very isolating job at times, and probably the most unique element of it is that you have very little direct impact on what you're being held accountable for, and that's a new. For most CEOs of rapidly growing firms, so that's a new feeling and a new dynamic that is often very frightening or very, again, isolating. So having a number of people that can help you through that, that you can call to make sure you're doing the right things, I think is vital.
Well, you're a mentor to CEOs, Keith. Do you remember when you were doing it for the first time? And how did you develop the skills you have today? I'm curious. I don't know the answer to this.
Well, I guess I would say three things. One is don't be afraid to jump in water over your head. And it always
It's easy to say at your height.
What's that?
It's easy to say at your height.
And after a while, that gets addicting. That's the best way to learn. I'll never forget probably my first experience doing that. I was 19 years old at General Motors working on the third shift chassis line in Detroit. And the two biggest issues I had to deal with was drugs and prostitution. That's jumping in water over your head.
Yeah, no kidding.
I didn't know anything about any of that. I mean, I know, maybe one, but I never.
I see that you didn't incorporate that into
19,
your business
man.
model going forward. That's good.
So always jumping in water over your head, I think, for sure. Because I don't believe this stuff is written in a book. I mean, I'm not saying don't read books, but the second thing is it really comes along the way of the mentoring. I was fortunate when we were building Ariba, for whatever reason, but actually I do know the reason, but it's a fun story, where John Chambers was my mentor. And so
That's right.
I'd meet with him for breakfast once a month, and we did it for about 5 years. I tell you, I learned so much from him. I had great guys at GM. The guy who was my mentor ended up being the CEO of General Motors, all that stuff. So finding that, because you're never too old to learn, and you can learn from everybody. The third way is, I think, being a mentor yourself and teaching yourself, because I believe you don't know anything unless you can teach it. So, grabbing Aaron Levy, and he's like, how do you build an enterprise sales force? And I'm sitting there, we're talking, I'm going, I'm probably learning more from him than he is of me. And actually I find that every single time. So those three things. And by the way, you have to be a student of human nature. So even my 3-year-old twins, who are a boy and girl, that's a study in human nature. If you just see these
and
guys.
you're not in control.
Yeah, the boy follows the girl. So this is classic. So I think always be learning. Yeah.
I mean, these are all great points. The only thing I would add is, I think as CEO and when you have a team, time is finite.
Yeah.
Time is limited. And so I look at my job increasingly as setting myself and my team up to work smart. So focus, so that we're actually very clear on setting higher targets on a smaller number of things, and keeping everybody focused, because the minute when you regardless of your size, you always have limited resources and you have limited time. And so if I'm not focused constantly on, are we working on the most valuable thing that allows us to drive and unlock exponential growth for the things that are really important to our mission, namely connecting people who should know each other. If we're not working on those things, or if I'm questioning where we should be focusing our time and attention, I'm not doing my job. And one of the big shifts for me was moving from valuing myself based on, am I successful? Are people, am I liked? Or any of those kinds of things, and focusing in on one word and one word only, which is effective. Am I effective? And am I effective externally? Am I effective in recruiting? Am I effective with my team? Am I effective in communicating the areas of focus for our company and our product and what we're doing? And when I started to focus in on thinking about my performance as being effective and being effective as the goal, really interesting things started to happen. And I found myself looking at any situation, either positive, a situation that, was outside of my control, positive and negative, as what can I take away from this that will enable me to be even more effective the next time around. And things are a lot more fun when you're very clear on how you and your team have defined success, and that you are constantly looking at ways for a set of people to work smarter, because my expectation is that everybody's working hard already, but if they're not working hard and smart, I'm doing something wrong.
Just to comment on that, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, being a CEO, you have an infinite amount of things that you could do, right? So getting the team focused, having a process in terms of decision making and what's on the decision making agenda and what's not, and it changes as you scale the company. And I'll never forget one of the things John Chambers said. We go, Keith, I'll tell you, the most important thing is you got to have yourself a great assistant. A great assistant. Now your assistant can shadow my, and then all of a sudden, it's how do you save your time? So now, I have an assistant who's been with me for 14 years.
She's wonderful.
Now I told her to hire an assistant because if something happens to her, the company's shut down. You have a chief of staff who organizes all these quarterly business reviews and the strategy and all that. Then I have the concept of the old IBM bagman, it's a young person who prepares you for and follows up on all the sales calls and goes with you and all that. Because how do you leverage yourself, And to have that office of the CEO, and it could be, could be virtually, but it changes as you grow.
Well, I just love this. I always walk away and I go back to my desk thinking how I can do things differently. I love this. Effectiveness will be tattooed on my forehead. There are more questions we could talk about: board management, board selection, co-founders, all these kinds of things. But I want to open it up to Q&A to give you guys a chance to ask some questions of these guys. So please, questions for this group. Well, you're going to get I think a microphone so everybody can hear you. Thank you.
Hi. Very interesting discussion. I spent almost 20 years in international markets. I just moved to the US. I find that there's almost a self-indulgence about this market, right? So how do you build your company? Do you think internationally from the beginning, or is it an after effect? And how do you design your team to be internationally focused?
I've had people on all three of the companies that I founded within the first 2 employees, or certainly in the case of Mightybell, my co-founder, someone who was not born here. So, at my last company, Ning, our CTO was from Argentina, and we made a huge effort to bring people in from all over the place. And the same is true for Mightybell. So even as a 12-person team, 4 people are, folks that are here on either J1 or H1B visas. And for me, being, like Mike Abbott, a Cupertino native, it's incredibly important that I partner with people who care that Argentinian Spanish and Mexican Spanish and Spain Spanish are 3 totally different languages, and if I'm not aware of that, I'm an idiot. And I think those kinds of global perspectives are incredibly important to have when you launch any kind of service that day one you have registered users in 72 different countries.
And I think, so for Docusign, the global standard for digital transaction management, nowadays I think you have to think global right out of the gate. It has to be core to your DNA. So, at our last all hands meeting, that was all I focused about was, this is our global expansion strategy. Here's the 12 arrows that we have in our quiver, and here's how we're going to sequence that out. So for our 150 people in Brazil, or the folks in Australia, folks in the UK, know that when that CEO's dedicating, this all hands meeting that only happens once every 6 months to the international side of the business and how core it is, and also to explain why, and it's more than just, that's 70% of the potential market. This is how it is a incredible barrier to entry to build, because it's such a complicated play to run that it's tough for the big guys and it's too expensive for the small guys. And then to talk about how we can use this as a strategic offensive weapon when we're in the global 2,000 accounts, because we couldn't get that business unless we were global. So I think for the team to understand why, and then you talk about all the opportunities that you create for people's careers, and you hold that up. So anyway, I think that's the opportunities for the team is really what gets people excited, and a lot of going back and forth.
Maybe one thing for us, so we're in business globally, it's a standard rational thing in terms of assessing supply and demand in different regions and when we can enter. But one thing we've done that's kind of cool, because there's such a need for talent right now, is doing global programming contests. And then we attempt to hire the winners. It was funny, one year though, the winner was a 17-year-old from Romania. I guess it's challenging to get a visa for someone 17 with that exceptional technical talent clause. So we're waiting patiently for him to go through his education. But it's really been awesome, because it's kind of cool, right? There's so much talent around the world. It's fun to be able to take people and give them opportunities, and they come out to Silicon Valley and then kind of see a new life and new opportunities out here.
Crowdsourcing skills. Other questions?
So how often do people try to steal your employees? And except for culture, what are the other ways of keeping your employees?
Oh, go ahead.
We hear from our employees that they get LinkedIn requests about several times a week. If you're a developer, it's probably several times an hour. And I think that it happens all the time. And I think that the key is that there's always going to be an extra dollar you can make out there. And employees know that they need to, our team members are choosing to work with us because of a lot of different factors. If they wanted to make more money, they could go do something else, probably not as a startup, though we definitely feel that they're adding a lot of value to themselves, and as shareholders, there's going to be a really nice financial reward. But it's about that journey and painting a picture for them, as well as then following through on it about what personally they're going to get out of this beyond just the financial reward. And if they're not, if that challenge isn't there for them anymore, telling that, making sure that we can find them a challenge somewhere else. Frankly, one of the challenges we had as a company is that we hired 20 people that had a very similar profile, and then once we got to 30 people, we needed to promote some of those 20 people to be managers. All 20 people wanted to be managers because they're just that type of people. They're excellent. They want to win. They want to advance. They want to self-improve. We could only choose 5 of them. So that left others that were looking for that manager role, and they found it at other companies, and they're doing incredibly well. And hopefully one day they'll want to come back to HotelTonight.
I think understanding people's personal motivations, and this is why the fit at the beginning is so important. If I can't give somebody a mission that they can believe in and all the things that they want to do personally, they are going to be open to finding other things in a way that if I get that fit right up front, I know what I need to do as a leader and as the CEO to motivate them, inspire them, give them the things that they're looking for professionally. So I think that's why it's better up front to know that you can't give somebody the things that they want or need and call it early and get to a fast no, as opposed to trying to convince somebody that this is an opportunity when it's not right for them. On a completely related but different note, one of the things that I think people and companies make a big mistake in, and it tends to be first-time CEOs at startups that are just so excited about their momentum and how they're changing the world and beating the big guys. One of the worst things you can do as a CEO in a company is to make a very big deal in the press of somebody you've poached or stolen from a different company, because all you're doing is setting yourself up 6 months down the line when that person leaves or when something else happens to look dumb. So if you're tempted to do that, I'd like to encourage you not to do it, and just stay focused on your mission and what you are doing, as opposed to thinking how awesome you are because you stole somebody from some other company. Karma's a bitch.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are surveys that have been done about why people change jobs, and it's not because of pay. It's exactly, Gina, what you mentioned. It's about career advancement and having that sense of fit for you, and are you growing and are you developing. It's a huge issue, and it is different for every person, and understanding what it is that makes people work. So more questions from the audience. Yes.
I really like what the CEO of HotelTonight said about believing in the journey, because as a CEO of a startup, there's good days, there's bad days, there's tough days, there's so if one of you would talk to us about what keeps you going, because
Yeah.
if I didn't have a life outside of my startup, I think I would be dead by now.
So it's what keeps you going is the question. If you can't hear, particularly you believe in your journey, but how do you keep yourself going? You guys should all answer that. I love that.
I think one thing is never get too high on the highs and don't get too low on the lows.
Wow.
Everybody's had the experience where you crawled up under the fetal position under your desk, and I think a CEO's enemy is their ego. Their friend is their sense of humor.
Yeah.
To understand, that's what I always say to our guys. I go, look, we're in the software business. If we make a mistake, we're not going to kill somebody. Take life seriously, but don't take, yourself so seriously. And the other thing is having a strong sense of community, whether it's, for me, it's my family, my 5 kids. It's like, I know I'm getting bear hugs when I go home, It could be your friends, but it's also within the company itself and creating that community. That is really, really key. That'll get you through the tough times, and it will also help you when the recruiters come knocking on the door. It's like we talk about like the Docu family, we have Docu babes, Docu twins. Or I haven't picked. It's like to have that sense of community is key, because by definition you're going to have super tough days.
I think for us, there's something, I guess, not articulated in the nerdy but lovable part of culture, but it's this desire to be of service, and so we all get jazzed when customers tell us, that was awesome, we've never sold that many cars for that advertising investment, or whatever their own metric was. And so we did realize, though, that sort of our salespeople and account managers get exposed to that all the time. But of course, engineers, unless you create channels, right, that doesn't flow. So for us, it was funny. It was one of these things that people were debating for months. What should we do? And finally, I just said, okay, never mind, we're done. There's going to be an email alias called VOC for Voice of the Customer. All engineers will be subscribed to it. And anybody else who cares to know what customers think about us, and then in sales, whenever we hear interesting things, we'll email it to VOC, at least to have that channel. And that's pretty cool, actually. The idea was, verbatims from customers to flow through, because they often say really amazing things about the results. It's it seems like it's just a little thing that to have whatever X% return on investment was, but when you get the oh my God, I got promoted, that kind of stuff coming back, it's pretty energizing. And even in the early days, right, if the product was awesome, and for us it was distinguished even pretty early on, that kind of keeps everybody else going. Even, for example, we were started in 2008, so we had to live through 2009, which wasn't a fun time. But even then, we had happy customers, and so you could kind of keep people going with those little vignettes.
That is great. I think I'm getting the out of time. We're getting the hook. This is so great. We could have done this for another hour. I encourage you guys to follow these guys. It's been impressive. I will. I've gotten a lot out of it. Thanks to Hot Topics, all your sponsors, for having us here. This is great to have a chance to talk about these kinds of things. Thanks, all of you. I mean, you both are really busy. All of you are very busy. Thank you.
I wanted to say the same thing, actually. Thank you for everyone involved, and obviously thank you for Kate and Aileen earlier to organise both panels. Just a couple of things to say, and I've got a gift for you as well to introduce you to. What we've done over the last 4 years is quite difficult. So we do similar events around the world as this, and we hear brilliant thought leadership. But building a global tech ecosystem is a difficult thing to do alone. So we're actually working very closely with a number of partners who are helping us in many ways. And I just wanted to mention them quickly. They are Telefonica, Qualcomm Ventures, Barclays, and also a firm called Octopus Investments, who are the most active tech investor in the UK today. Right, and I promise you an opportunity, and I'm going to tell you about it right now. If I can invite Tom Dickey, who's the editor of Hot Topics Digital, to the stage, and he's going to tell you all about something for you to get involved with. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil, and good morning, everyone. So, alongside our global events and monthly print magazine, we're now scaling the digital entity of Hot Topics. So, our vision for this is clear. We want Hot Topics to become the primary place to come and learn from the people who run the global tech industry. In order to do this, we've created a contributor network of people to share thought leadership directly on our platform. In preparation for a launch later this year, we've recruited over 100 of the industry's brightest minds as contributors and built a site which reflects the quality of their content. In contrast to both the events and the magazine, which are designed for a very exclusive group, we're inviting a far wider audience to access our content online. We're partnering with universities and business schools around the world to enable their students and alumni to benefit from the content being created, and welcoming tech enthusiasts, tech employees, and tech consumers to the site. The opportunity, therefore, for writers is to influence not only our existing community of the investors, leaders, and buyers who shape the industry, but also to inspire and educate the next generation of entrepreneurs around the world. We believe there's no other destination for tech leaders to share their voice and experience such a targeted group, whilst building personal and company brand in the process. A number of people in the room today are already signed up as contributors, and we'd welcome a chance to get as many of you involved as possible. So please do come and talk to me afterwards, or send an email to Tom at hottopics.ht, and we can have a conversation about getting you involved. Thank you very much.
Right, we have an hour of networking. The next event we have, which we're going to be streaming live, is in London on the 11th of November. So it'd be good if some of you can come over the pond to see us. Enjoy the content, get involved, and thank you for your time today. Thank you.